How's it going, guys? We're back for another CCH Podcast, Critters Conservation and Hiking, and I can't wait to get into this episode with you. We have another professor from Indiana University of Pennsylvania, or as we call it, those who go there, IUP. We have Dr. Christopher Schaney, and he's another professor that I had in class. He's also the graduate coordinator for the Geography Regional Planning Department. He's going to go over a lot of different things that he's doing in his career. We're going to talk about one of my YouTube videos, the Tonoma Flight, and we're also going to get into a little bit more about his career and some of the decisions that he made. So if you're looking to learn more about the geography program for Indiana University of Pennsylvania, or you're interested in listening to more geospatial talk, geology, and geography talk, then this is the podcast for you. This has been a long time in the making, and I can't wait to get into this one. So thank you very much. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's get into it. How's it going, Woods and Forests Media? We're back with a new episode, believe it or not, after a few months of being away because of the taxing challenges of school and trying to graduate with a master's degree. But as we've continued with the new season here, season 3 of the CCH Podcast, Critters Conservation and Hiking, we're joined by Dr. Chris Schaney, who is he's the geography advisor for the graduate department. He also teaches a lot of classes like remote sensing, GIS, and stuff with drones, UAS. So we're going to get into talking about that and a little bit more about some of the other topics that Dr. Schaney is interested in, and what I think would also be interesting for you guys to understand with public speaking and GIS and just different things about his career. So we're going to get into this, but before we really go too deep, Dr. Schaney, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the audience?
Yeah, so my name is Dr. Schaney, Chris Schaney, and I'm associate professor and graduate coordinator in the Geography, Geology, Environment and Planning Department at IUP. And I've had both Aaron and Josh in several classes, and it's nice to be here to be able to talk about whatever we talk about here in the next few minutes.
So I wanted to pull this up real quick, just so that way you guys can see it. Are you guys both looking at the department here?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, so it's a new department, Dr. Schaney. It has a lot of different pieces to it, whether it's geography, geology, regional planning, like you said, and there's also certificates. So I don't know if you'd be interested in talking about a little bit of your role or how things have changed with the geography and now plus all these other programs, how that has impacted the curriculum or maybe your department and different things like that with geography.
So one of the biggest changes that we've had is we have moved from humanities to the natural sciences, and the natural sciences has different way of viewing the world and different kind of prerogatives. So it's been interesting to try to incorporate some of those things into our program. So they've always been there. We've always been data driven, and GIS and remote sensing and drones are all STEM type of disciplines. But we have to, we've been learning that we have to push that data a little bit more to the forefront than we had previously, because as you may or may not know, geography tells not only a environmental aspect of the world around us, which ties in very nicely with geosciences and the natural sciences, but we also don't remove humans from that story. So that's something that we've always, especially through planning, pushed forward in our balance of data and humans and their impact on changing environments and changing urban spaces and human built environments. But that's been the kind of the most interesting piece about that is to be able to kind of just emphasize a different aspect of geography now that we've changed colleges.
So I want you to walk me through if I was gonna go back in time, or if there's let's say hypothetically, I'm a new student and I'm reaching out about my interest in coming for the graduate program for the geography department, specifically going into geography and probably planning. Um, what do you look for whenever you're recruiting or whenever you're being approached by students? As like, are there categories like good, like what's a good student approach to reach out to you versus maybe uh, some that you'd prefer, that they like tactics or emails, that maybe ways of trying to reach out to you that they don't approach? So one that would, I guess, help somebody to successfully engage with you about getting into the program.
Well, I just wanted to say first that there really is no bad way. Email is a very busy, well-traveled highway, so it's really difficult to catch some emails that come through the pike because they just get buried so quickly. But what I look for in a student, prospective student, is somebody that is interested and is interesting and is already has a curiosity towards learning. And I think that if students take that approach, then they're easy to kind of coach, and they are enthusiastic about the work that we put in front of them, and it makes for a really good experience. So, once we get students in through the door, I mean, there's always some are better than others, and that's just the way things go everywhere. So, but as long as, the things that I look for is just an interested, engaged person that wants to meet the challenges and knows how to work to do that.
That's a good approach. Now, there's a couple different routes we could take with this. I guess first I'll start with asking you, because I've also asked Dr. Hoke, and I don't think Dr. Benhart answered this either. We forgot to ask him, or somehow it got buried. But I want to know, in your personal opinion, what your favorite class to teach is.
Um, I've taught quite a few of them. I think I'm up to 16 or 17 courses that I've taught since I started doing this. I think 2010. So, but I might be, just because it's kind of newish to me, but one of my favorite courses that I've teach is conservation. And I taught this spring, and I taught it for the first time in maybe 5 or 6 years. And it was just a really, really refreshing course to teach. I really enjoy the subject matter, and I enjoy, telling those stories in class.
That's a very interesting segue. So, Josh, now we're putting you on the spot. So, he was your professor for that class. So, let's do a little analysis here. So, what were your thoughts? What was your initial take on the conservation class with Dr. Schaney here? You could, if you want to grill him, go for it. I'm sure you could take it. But yeah, just tell us, what was your thoughts?
I thought it was a very interesting course. I learned a lot of diverse perspectives about environmental issues. I learned about a lot of different influential people that have a lot of diverse writings about different environmental problems going on around the world and around the nation. And I learned about all the different aspects of conservation. So I think it was a really interesting course, and it kind of helped shape my perspective on the way I think about things and how I think about managing environmental resources. And yeah.
Well, that's a good answer, Josh, because that's pretty much what I'm looking to do in that class, is to just, be able to just expose you guys to ways of thinking that you might not necessarily be exposed to. And then you can kind of think about that and internalize it. And then at the end of it, you have a little bit of a different perspective or appreciation of some of the issues around us. And I'm glad that you said that. That's what I'm shooting for.
He's going to give you an A if you come back and take it again. uh, that's interesting. So a couple of these questions that I want to ask you tonight actually go, or they stem from this class. So what I tried to do whenever I was working at IMAPS at IUP was ask some of the students who are in the geography department different questions that they might want answered, or some clarifications, or just some interesting things maybe you covered in class. And this has even come up in some of the biology classes, but GMO. So I wanted to ask what your opinion was from your perspective on GMO crops and even perennials. Do you support it? Are you against it? Do you think there's a little bit more to explain? It's more gray area. So what's your take on it?
Well, GMOs, I mean, from my perspective, is GMOs, I mean, you're fine tuning what you could say, plant or whatever to, resist pests, or to bring out one characteristic of that plant that's favorable and then suppress the others. And, one way or another, I think that the danger is for me is it's a reduction in diversity, genetic diversity of those resources. And when you do that, you leave yourself open to pests and disease and things like that. And I think that while it might be desirable in the short term, that in the long term, it opens us up to a host of issues that at some point we're going to have to deal with. And, the banana is a perfect example. The Cavendish banana is the second banana. The first was a Gross Michael, and it succumbed to a virus that attacked its roots. And so the Gross Michael is largely not planted now in mass for, banana production. And the Cavendish has largely replaced it, but it's starting to succumb to that same type of infection. As the virus there lives in the soil, and it finds a way. It keeps mutating, and it finds a way to attack those plants. And so when it can, and it's the issue of monoculture, and when it can impact one of those plants, it impacts all of those plants. And when we look at how connected we are globally, and how we move goods around the globe very, very easily, it's very easy to be able to spread those types of diseases and put our food at risk. And that's why, when we look at conservation of seeds and the Svalbard seed vault, and I think it's off an island off the coast of Norway, it becomes really important, because what it does is it provides a genetic bank that we can reach into and try to solve future problems. So that's my concern with GMOs, is that just reduces the diversity and increases risk. Not to mention, it's hard to talk about like human health impacts, because it takes a long time for those to happen. It's difficult to draw straight lines of cause and effect and things like that. So I think that that aspect of diversity is where I find it most concerning.
So you think you're more so critical of it? Would you say maybe not completely opposed, but you're definitely like critical of the idea of GMO food?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think we have to. One of the things that I think we make mistakes are we get excited for something and then we go at it 110%, and damned be the consequences. We'll deal with those when they happen. So, with that kind of attitude towards things, it's, if you go into the problem with your eyes open and start looking for potential issues before they become catastrophic, I think that's an important thing that we need to do.
That might be a mic drop sentence there. If we go into the problem with our eyes open, for anybody that's listening, I think that's something you could take as life advice, no matter what you're doing. I don't know, man. That's good. That might need to be put on like a magnet, or like a drawing, and put in somebody's bedroom or something, where you're gonna see it like go into every problem, like with your eyes open. That's words of Dr. Schaney there. You should plaque that one. But Josh, I know that your family, you guys are farmers, and I just want to know, you could agree with Dr. Schaney, you could disagree, but just add something to what he had said before we get into like perennials for GMO as well.
I kind of have a similar stance to Dr. Schaney. I grew up in a farming community. I kind of been exposed to how different farmers operate, and I listen to different channels on the internet because I'm interested in farming. So I think that GMOs are definitely we shouldn't cancel them out right away. They definitely improve operations, but then again, there's a lot of unknown risks associated with them. So we just need to be proactive and try to see what we can do to try to mitigate those risks and try to see what we need to do in the future with regard to more studies and and understanding their long-term effects.
Yeah.
Did you guys cover GMO crops in class? Is that one of the topics or something you briefly mentioned?
Yeah, we went through GMOs. We went through a video of GMO. Well, it wasn't GMOs. It was just it was more agriculture and soil health was the documentary, but GMOs were kind of in that discussion. And I usually show a video in class, but I think I showed a different section of it this year in class. So we had definitely bring it up in conversation, but it wasn't, it was one of the aspects of what things we cover in class and not in passing.
That's interesting. So I want to bring up another thing here as we move into a little bit more kind of the second half of the GMO conversation. But I've learned in some forestry classes that there is an idea of using genetically modifying plants, especially like the American chestnut, to possibly mitigate loss towards disease and fungus and different things like that and pests. So if we're not eating it and it's not about food supply, let's say we're looking at critically endangered species or species that can't reestablish because of pests or they've been thrown out of the forest because, there's all kinds of problems. I guess walk me through what your thoughts are, Dr. Schaney, on whether we should reintroduce a tree that's been gone to the forest landscape for so long, even if it, means using a GMO approach to release it, which is actually being talked about right now, or if you think, if it's out of the forest ecosystem now, might as well keep it out, because there's a lot of different approaches with that, but just wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think that, because something was, overvalued, I'd say, and so if it's been out of a forest environment like a tree or something because of over harvesting or something like that, and then it was never reintroduced again because it wasn't a priority to kind of reintroduce, then I think that would have a place back in a forest, even though it would be, sometime away, sometime absent from that environment. And if GMOs are the way that you are able to reintroduce that species back into the environment, then I think that would be something that would be interesting to kind of look at and try and monitor to see how things react to it in the future.
Yeah, I think there's a handful of species that could possibly get the green light for it, but I know we talked about in a forest restoration and ecology class the idea that the American chestnut had the blight and had all kinds of issues trying to reestablish, but it was used for timber and it was a very important tree for the ecosystem, possibly a keystone species that was the most dominant tree in the land in Pennsylvania, at least, and especially in our region, and just that it, very, very few of them now are in existence because of the blight, how bad it is. But yeah, I think it's interesting. I really do with GMO crops and perennials. But How's it going, guys? I just wanted to take a moment to tell you that our podcast is now sponsored by the nonprofit PA Woods and Forests. I just want to take a second to explain who they are, what they do, and how we're affiliated with them. PA Woods and Forests is a conservation nonprofit of 501c3 and also incorporated organization that focuses on the conservation of amphibians and also pollinator insects, meaning bees, butterflies, frogs and toads, and a few salamanders. There's so many different projects that are taking place with building backyard habitats for both amphibians and pollinator insects, but also doing the Frog Week Conservation Project, which I'm sure you're aware is the biggest project that we focused on for the YouTube channel here. They're our collaborative partner. We focus on filming their field work and then presenting that to you. We have a great connection and affiliation with them, and they are also now sponsoring this podcast. So I just wanted to run a little plug for them as something nice to do and thank them for supporting us and sponsoring the podcast. But again, make sure you go and check out what PA Woods and Forests is up to. We have a collaborative blog that we actually have posts in, so you can learn what we're doing and what they're doing. And we have a lot of other really unique things to focus on. I'm actually their president and founder, so I have a lot of different things here talking about with different hats on, whether I'm the Woods and Forests media owner or the PA Woods and Forests founder and president. But I'm very thankful that we were able to position ourselves with the nonprofit to be able to sponsor the media brand and give back a little bit to all the time and effort that it takes to film and get our crew together to do these episodes. So thanks again. Don't forget to go out and follow and support PA Woods and Forests and check out what they're doing at their website, pawoodsandforests.com. But let's go back into today's episode. And again, don't forget to like and subscribe and share for more content.
Well, I mean, with climate change, you're going to have some, species are going to move or migrate. We see that with ticks. We see it with the buckeye in Ohio is starting to migrate north. So they're invasive to a specific region, but they're not really invasive from a standpoint, if you look at different scales of things as you go out, as you move out into wider and wider spaces, then they're native of that type of region. So native North America, and things like that. So I think that would be, that's just a consequence of climate change and a warming planet. And I don't think that there's much that we can do about that. And when we look at GMOs in the American chestnut, I guess you're making them resistant to the virus that's getting them. Did you say blight before?
Yes.
Yeah, and then and then you're going to have to genetically alter some species to navigate climate and things like that. I imagine. I don't even know if that's possible to do that. But if you're thinking of, is the forest going to look like what it did 100 years ago? There's no way that can happen. I mean, if you look at the beginning of the 1800s to today, it would be unrecognizable, the forests that we see around us. And so I just think that's an inevitable consequence of us.
Well, I actually have a comment about that. We have 2 American chestnuts on our property. My grandfather gave us 2 chestnuts about maybe 10 years ago. They actually blight resistant, and we planted one in our woods and then one up above our house, and they're both growing pretty well. I mean, it's pretty interesting that they don't have any disease or anything. So it's definitely working. I don't know if that's going to be introduced to like the forest in general in the future or what. It's kind of intriguing to think about.
Yeah, when I grew up, there was an American chestnut in our yard. And I used to get endless joy out of whipping the seed pods at my brother when I was when we were growing up. So if you don't know, the seed pod of American chestnut is a big spiky ball that is really sharp, and it hurts when you get hit by one.
Yeah. So Josh, you said you have 2 of them. How old would you say they are, and which one do you think is further ahead in terms of size? Like, who looks to be winning, where they're established? Who's the bigger tree, the one in the yard or the one in the forest?
The one in the yard is definitely bigger. It's been injured because we had some trees cut down and it broke some of its branches off, but it's definitely bigger than the one in the forest, but they're both growing pretty equally well, though, I would say. Just the one in the forest is a little bit slower overall, I would say.
It makes sense because of probably being shaded, but I wasn't sure with soil if maybe the one in the forest had better soil in it.
It is better soil. It's definitely better in the forest. It's a lot more clay up above. It's near a field, a farmer's field up there, so it's definitely more clay up there.
So, like, what's the size of them though? Are they like approaching 10 feet? Are they like 2 feet? Like, what's the size of the trees?
I'd say between 10 and 15 feet tall.
Oh, they're pretty big, so
So they're getting pretty big.
that's pretty good. That's
Yeah, they're probably at least 10 years old or 15 years old, I would say.
yeah, that's pretty impressive. Hold on to
Yeah.
those trees.